There is a window in the school day that nobody writes about in the parenting books. It starts at approximately 3 o'clock or whenever a school day ends. It ends somewhere around 6, depending on your household, depending on how the day went, depending on how much got used up before the front door opened. It is not the hardest part of the day in terms of logistics. It is the hardest part in terms of nervous systems. Because by 3 o'clock, your neurodivergent child has been performing, not consciously most of the time, but all day long in an environment that was not designed for their brain. They have been modulating their volume, their movement, their responses, their self-expression. They have been holding things in. And when they walk through the door, they put it all down, every last bit of it. That is not a behavior problem. That is a human being arriving home. But if there is a reactive dog behind that door, what arrives with them lands directly in his environment, whether anyone intends that or not. This is the 3 to 6 problem, and it is one of the least talked about dynamics in households like mine. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennyfer Tan, professional dog trainer and certified family dog mediator, and this is episode 17. We are now in season 3 of this series, and if you're new here, season 3 is about the wider picture, not just the inside of my household, but the patterns that show up across stages of life. The things that change as your child grows, as your dog ages, as the household shifts around you. This episode is about one specific window of the day, the school year afternoon, the 3 to 6 problem. Daniel was not a child who had meltdowns at school. He had what his teachers sometimes described as a very good day, meaning he had managed, he had masked, though I did not have that word for it yet. He had organized himself around the social expectations of the classroom, the transitions, the unexpected fire drills, and the too loud cafeteria, and the group work that asked him to do things his brain found genuinely costly. He had held it together. And then he came home. What came home was not the boy his teachers saw. What came home was a teenager with every dial turned up, voice at full volume, movement too fast around the corners, a kind of compressed urgency to everything he did, like pressure finding its level. Sometimes it was happiness. Sometimes it was frustration. Sometimes it was both at once, which is its own particular texture. But it was always a lot. It was always more than the room seemed to be ready for. I was ready for it eventually. I had learned to read the quality of those first 10 minutes. I had learned what it meant and what it needed and roughly how long it would take to settle. Roscoe had not learned any of that yet. Roscoe, who spent the school day in a quieter version of the household. My husband gone to work early, my daughter at school, me at the desk, a predictability he could count on. He met the afternoon arrival like a change in weather, because it was. The sensory environment shifted dramatically in the space of a minute, and his nervous system responded the way nervous systems do when something they cannot predict arrives in force. He did not always react badly, but he was never, in those early years, relaxed about it either. This is something I had to learn to think about deliberately, what Roscoe's day actually looked like before 3 o'clock. Because the dynamic that happens at the door does not start at the door. It starts with whatever state both of them are arriving in. A dog who has had a decompression walk in the morning, some structured sniff time, a training session that filled the right kind of need, and a quiet afternoon. That dog has more in reserve for the arrival. His bucket is not full, he has room. A dog who has been in a condo for hours with limited enrichment, who heard noise in the hallway that he never identified, who did not get the morning walk because the morning was hard. That dog arrives at 3 o'clock, already partway to the top. The same arrival that he could manage on Tuesday tips him on Thursday. Most families are not thinking about this. They are thinking about the child, and rightly so. But the dog's state at 3 o'clock is something that can be prepared. It can be shaped. It is one of the few variables in that afternoon window that you actually have some influence over before the chaos begins. For us, this meant treating the pre-arrival period as intentional. Not elaborate, just deliberate. A walk timed for late afternoon when I could manage it. A slow sniff session in the building hallway. A Kong frozen the night before, ready to deploy. Something that gave Roscoe a job, an outlet, a state of mind that was closer to settled before the front door opened. It did not fix the afternoons, but it changed them. My daughter was 7 years younger than my son. She was 10 when Roscoe came home, and she had grown up with the rhythm of a neurodivergent household in a way that was simply the air she breathed. She did not have a word for what my son did in the afternoons. She just knew that there was a version of him at school pickup, and a version of him half an hour later, and that the transition between them required a certain amount of space. She gave him that space instinctively. She had learned, without anyone teaching her explicitly, how to navigate around the edges of what was happening without adding to it. Roscoe learned something like this too, over time. Not through training I did specifically for the afternoon, more through the accumulated experience of hundreds of arrivals, the pattern of what they brought, and eventually something that functioned like anticipation. Not dread, exactly, but a kind of preparedness. He learned to give my son space in those first minutes. He learned that the charge at the door was not the whole story. He learned to wait. The learning was not linear. It still is not. But the pattern is there now in a way it wasn't in the early years. My daughter's fluency in this household's language extended to the dogs too, in ways I only started noticing when she was 12 or 13. She would come in from school, stop in the doorway, read the room in about 4 seconds. Where is Roscoe? What is his body doing? What is Daniel's energy? And adjust accordingly. Sometimes she would go to Roscoe first, not to distract him, not to manage him, just to be a settling presence before the noise escalated. She did not know she was doing it, but she was. I want to spend a moment on something that does not get named enough in conversations about neurodivergent families and their dogs. The neurotypical sibling. My daughter grew up inside this household. She grew up with the 3 to 6 problem as a simple regular day. She never had a version of family life that didn't include navigating her brother's afternoon unwinding, reading the dog's state before deciding where to sit, modulating her own presentation because the room was already full. She developed capacities, social reading, emotional calibration, quiet self-regulation, that I did not teach her. She just built them because the household required them. There is something remarkable about this, and something I have only recently started sitting with honestly. I did not worry about her in the way I worried about my son. I trusted her to manage, and she did. She does. But managing is not the same as being supported, and there is a difference between a child who develops capacity because she is resilient and a child who develops capacity because the household did not have enough attention left over to give her a softer path. I do not know exactly which one she is. I suspect she is some of both. Roscoe knew, I think, in whatever way dogs know things. He gravitates toward her in the afternoons in a way he does not gravitate toward anyone else. Not the watchful, attuned, going to, whoever is struggling that he does for the rest of us. Something lighter than that. Something that looks like choosing where it is simply good to be. She is his playmate, but in the afternoons, I sometimes think he is also hers. There is no system that makes the 3 to 6 window easy. There is no protocol that converts it into a calm handoff. What there is, in my experience, is a set of things that make it less expensive for everyone. Decompression before, not just after. The walk timed for the pre-arrival window matters more than the walk after everyone is already activated. Getting Roscoe's bucket lower before the door opens changes what the arrival costs him. A decompression space that is genuinely his. Somewhere Roscoe can go when the level in the room rises, and not be followed, not be called away from, not be needed. On hard afternoons he uses it. I do not call him out of it. A transition buffer, even 5 minutes, a moment between the door opening and the household fully engaging, changes the trajectory. 5 minutes for my son to decompress before dinner is expected. 5 minutes for Roscoe to move through his own adjustment. The collision of two activated nervous systems, meeting head-on, is what costs the most. Anything that prevents that collision, buy something. And noticing what the daughter is carrying. This one took me the longest. She did not signal difficulty in the ways that were legible to me, but she was doing work in those afternoons. Quiet, invisible work, and it mattered that someone noticed. The 3 to 6 problem is not a dog problem. It is not a child problem. It is a household problem. A structural feature of what it means to ask a being who has been holding it together all day to walk through a door into a home where another being has also been carrying something. They are both arriving from their own version of the same thing. Both of them have spent the day managing. Both of them come home to release what they were holding. The difference is that my son does it loudly and visibly, and Roscoe does it by filling up quietly until something tips. Understanding that parallel did not fix the afternoons, but it changed how I stood in them. Instead of managing 2 separate problems in sequence, I started seeing one shared dynamic that needed one shared response. Less demand, more space, earlier intervention, and the acknowledgement that the 3 to 6 window is not a failure of anyone's behavior. It is just the hardest part of the day. Next episode, I want to move through time a little. We have been talking about the school years and the particular shape of a neurodivergent child and a dog navigating each other across those years. Next time, I want to talk about the teenage years specifically. What changes when your child is older? What the dog learns from that change? What gets harder and what quietly gets easier? I'm Jennyfer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies. Always.